The curious case of Miles Sanders. Is he going to be a draft day steal or a draft day bust? This is Explicit Sports Fantasy. Miles Sanders and the Philadelphia Eagles in general are a pretty interesting topic heading into the 2021 fantasy season. We all remember when this was an offense we all wanted to tap into, as it was recently a Super Bowl contending team. We had a guy who in his rookie season looked like an MVP caliber player in Carson Wentz, who's now gone. He's been replaced with an unknown, by all means, in his second year quarterback, and Jalen Hurst, who's a second round quarterback with a handful of starts. And although there is promise on the fantasy side as an actual quarterback, a lot of concern. All of this creates a lot of turmoil around this team in general heading into the 2021 fantasy season. And it makes a lot of the value for a lot of these players uncertain. Now, the one thing that I do know is this team is not as valuable as it used to be. We all know what the value of Miles Sanders can be. We all know the skill level of Miles Sanders. We all know he's one of the most efficient running backs with his touches last season. Now, when you actually look at his stats right now, it's actually quite impressive what he did in a 12-game span. Now, the problem, there's a reduction in receiving yards from his rookie season to his sophomore season. Some of that having to do with drops, some of that having to do with the fact that you're dealing with multiple quarterbacks last season, inaccuracy, and, well, he just wasn't as advertised in the passing game. Well, can he recover from that in year 3? Sure he can. The problem is now we're looking at a lot more competition in the backfield than he used to have. We used to be just thinking about Boston Scott, which, by the way, more news about Boston Scott and Miles Sanders later, but Boston Scott's been joined with guys like Kerryon Johnson, other guys like Jordan Howard, all have had flashes in the NFL, and then they went out and invested in Kenneth Gainwell in the draft. And Kenneth Gainwell, a guy that just basically seemed to fall because he sat out last year due to COVID, is a guy that is expected to be involved in this offense. Now, more so in the passing game than in the backfield, but that, once again, affects Miles Sanders as a receiving back and his value overall over the entire season. Now, we all know that Miles Sanders has the ability and the talent to be an RB1 in this league. Now, the problem is everything that we've talked about. Change. He's never even ran for 1,000 yards in his first 2 seasons. His receptions were down in his second season. A new offense. Now, there's some reports that this guy is going to be splitting work with Boston Scott this year. Now, I don't know if it's going to be a 50-50 split in the backfield. It might be something more like 60-40, but we've already mentioned the other guys that are involved in this backfield, how Gainwell will be involved in the passing game, and that limits the opportunity for Miles Sanders in the long run. Currently, the number 18 running back off the board, I'm not quite comfortable drafting him there quite yet. This is a guy who totally, like I said, has RB1 upside, but right now I'm looking at as a flex with the upside to ascend to that RB2, RB1 status depending on how the season goes. But right now, he looks more like a flex to me. Boston Scott looks like a guy who in PPR formats could creep into that flex position. You don't even know if Gainwell is going to be able to work into that format based on his receiving skills. This is a backfield that is really messy, really muddled, and something you just kind of might want to shy away from. Right now, a couple other running backs that I might be looking at over Miles Sanders based on where he's running, where he's being drafted. I'm going to look at places like Chris Carson, RB19, a guy who has a similar history of injuries to Miles Sanders, but when he's on the field in that Seattle offense, has been a guy who runs off more often than not in the RB1, RB2 range. And so you're getting him at RB19. I really like the value there. Josh Jacobs, we all know the upside, the pedigree, The problems also, the downside of the offensive line there in Oakland, but I really like Josh Jacobs based on the week-to-week workload that he should have as a floor. Once again, that's a big question mark for Miles Sanders. How about Myles Gaskin in Miami? Impressive last year. And guess what? The Dolphins didn't do anything to really push him out of that role. This is a guy who should be in an offense with Tua in his second year, a revamped passing game that should be a better offense in the second year, should give Myles Gaskin more opportunities in the red zone, and if he can stay healthy, is a guy that can totally give you RB2 numbers, no problem. And then I'll also look at Daryl Henderson, who, with Matt Stafford coming in, this should be a more prolific offense. This should be more reminiscent of that Super Bowl caliber offense that we saw from the Rams just a couple of years ago, and has faltered since. A lot of that having to do with the limitations at quarterback with Jared Goff. Now, with Matt Stafford coming in, I really like Daryl Henderson this year now that he gets to be the guy. Guess what? Sean McVay's already said this guy is not playing in the preseason. He is the guy. And you're getting him with an ADP of RB25. Please give me some Daryl Henderson over a guy like Miles Sanders right now where there's just so many question marks. This is a really big gamble in Miles Sanders. Huge upside. Huge upside. The talent is there. But this has extreme bust potential. And I need him to fall a little bit farther in the draft for me to feel comfortable taking a risk and using a pick on this guy. Because I want him in a situation where I don't need him to come through. And right now, I'm still needing where you're taking him in the draft. I need somebody to contribute on my roster on a week-to-week basis. And right now, with all the uncertainty coming out of that Eagles camp right now, I'm just concerned about Miles Sanders.